Welcome to Step Up, Gear Up, Transformative Equality and Empowerment for the 2030, the session on the Goal 5 of the SDGs. I am Atsuko Miwa, co-chair of Japan Civil Society Network on SDGs. This session is co-organized by my organization and UNDP Representation Office in Tokyo. For those watching at home, you can join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag #TurnItAround or the hashtag SDGs で世界を変えよう。Goal 5 of the SDGs is about gender equality and the empowerment of women. As many of us are already aware, gender equality is the critical driving force for the entire SDGs, and yet we have not seen the stable progress so far, unfortunately. What is alarming for the Goal 5 now is that there have been reports from many parts of the world that the achievement of the Goal 5 has been badly affected by the pandemic. That is a reason why we have to step up and gear up. Today, we have invited 4 prominent speakers from around the globe, and we'll focus on 4 targets of the Goal 5. Let me introduce the speakers of the session. Marika Iyer is Asia Programs Coordinator and Humanitarian Action Specialist of Global Network of Women Peace Builders, a New York-based international NGO. She is joining us from New York, and we'll talk about the Target 5.2, which is on the elimination of gender-based violence. Her presentation will focus on conflict-related violence against women. Munir Hussain is Program Analyst of UNFPA Bangladesh, joining us from Dhaka, and he will talk about the Target 5.3, which is about abolition of traditional and harmful customs and practices, including female genital mutilation and child marriage. He will focus on initiatives against child marriage. Asako Tsuji is CEO and Creative Director of Alka Inc. of Tokyo, Japan. She will talk about the Target 5.5, which is about women's leadership and their equal participation in decision-making of every arena of society. She will talk about the importance of raising voices. Tomoko Fukuda is Regional Director of International Planned Parenthood Federation, known as IPPF, in East and Southeast Asia and Oceania region. She's joining us from Kuala Lumpur of Malaysia, and we'll talk about the Target 5.6, which is about sexual and reproductive health and rights. The session consists of 2 parts, the first on the past and present, and the second on the future, which will be followed by the interactive dialogue. So let's start. The first speaker is Marika. Marika, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. In traditionally patriarchal societies, women, young women, and girls are excluded from political decision-making, along with education and economic opportunities, which increases their vulnerability to sexual violence. They also experience a disproportionate impact of conflict. The impact of the pandemic has further exacerbated structural gender inequalities in conflict-affected communities and humanitarian emergencies. For example, travel and mobility restrictions have severely inhibited the delivery of essential services and humanitarian aid to vulnerable groups, including women, young women, and adolescent girls. To end violence against women and girls in conflict settings, we must invest in gender-responsive peace processes, post-conflict resolution, political decision-making, efforts to prevent violent extremism, and humanitarian action. To achieve this, women's leadership and meaningful participation in decision-making on peace and security is critical. Women are often stereotyped as victims of conflict without agency. Thus, they remain overlooked, marginalized, and excluded from political decision-making and peace processes. Nevertheless, women throughout history have defied stereotypes as peace builders and agents of change, from Northern Ireland to Colombia to Liberia. In the Philippines, young women peace builders that we at the Global Network of Women Peace Builders work with significantly contributed to the peaceful transition to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao after 5 decades of conflict by encouraging local ownership and support for Bangsamoro organic law, and therefore the peace process. The ratification of Bangsamoro organic law, which established the new Bangsamoro government, occurred after votes were cast in plebiscites in Mindanao in January and February 2019. Before the plebiscites, there was a distinct lack of awareness of the importance of Bangsamoro organic law by community members. To facilitate nonpartisan electoral education ahead of the plebiscites, local young women in Mindanao organized community dialogues to raise awareness of the components of Bangsamoro organic law, particularly its gender-sensitive provisions. As a result, over 1,500 young people pledged to vote responsibly in the plebiscites and raise awareness amongst their local communities to encourage other young voters to do the same. Local ownership of the Bangsamoro organic law in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, led by youth, is crucial to an effective and successful peace process. Similarly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, women peace builders have quickly mobilized as frontline responders to the pandemic in conflict-affected communities, often bridging gaps in government relief programs to meet the urgent needs of marginalized groups in their communities. For example, local women's groups in Cauca and Tolima, Colombia, distributed 10,000 face masks, condoms, and pregnancy tests to vulnerable and displaced women and girls since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. In South Sudan, women's groups are fighting disinformation on the pandemic and the fragile peace process by disseminating information in local languages in markets in Jumba. Their feminist emergency response mitigated the negative impacts of the pandemic on women and girls while continuing essential work for conflict prevention and resolution. To conclude, efforts to effectively prevent and respond to violence against women, young women, and girls in conflict settings must center around women's meaningful participation and leadership in peace processes. When women participate in peace processes, they ensure that they are inclusive, gender sensitive, sustainable, and implemented at the local level. We need to ensure that when we strive for inclusion, it extends to all, especially people with disabilities, Indigenous women, young women, refugees and internally displaced persons, and gender nonconforming and LGBTQIA+ people, and that their roles go beyond being observers or advisors to really being key influencers and co-decision makers. Thank you.
Thank you, Marika. And the next speaker is Munir. So Munir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Atsuko Miwa. As you were saying that about the traditional harmful practices, and you all know that globally there are a number of harmful traditional practices are prevalent, and in this part of the world, South Asia, and especially in Bangladesh, we are facing child marriage as the traditional harmful practice. And since our independence from 1971, we have been facing this challenge enormously, and still it's going on. And if I want to show you the issue from past to present, like you can see the trends of child marriage in Bangladesh. In 1969, it was 93% of women aged 20 to 24 years were first married before their age 18, and it is gradually declining. But you see the time period pass in this time, almost 50 years, but we could come to the point of 51%. And this is the latest data from Bangladesh. The 51% of women aged 20 to 24 years get married before their 18th birthday. And this is a huge challenge for Bangladesh. And you know, the mean age of marriage in Bangladesh is 15.7, which is a slight higher than 14.5 like 10 years back. And I mean, despite of effort, a lot of effort from different parts of the country, from the stakeholders, from the government, we are still lagging behind the target we set for the country development, also the SDG targets. And if you see the percentage of 2024 who were first married before age 15 and 18 by residence, wealth, content, and education, ethnicity, you will find very interesting that the poverty comes, I mean, to play a big role in this issue. When we see the richest is 38% and poorest is 63%, almost half, that means poverty plays a big role here. And if you see also the education, 67% who are non or primary education, but higher than secondary education is 23%, is also 1/3 decline due to higher education. So these two things like poverty and education plays a very important role for these harmful practices in Bangladesh. And also there are differences in rural urban, but that is not that much significant. And also ethnicity, it's very close. And yeah, so these are the factors that we consider for child marriage. And if you see in the globe, in this region and globally, the child marriage situation in Bangladesh is highest in South Asia. You see, globally, it is also one of the highest. Niger is the high, 76, whereas Bangladesh is 51. And this shows the issue here in Bangladesh, the child marriage issue. So because of the child marriage, 113 adolescents are having this fertility rate in Bangladesh, and this is also coming as a significant challenge for the country development. And I would like to conclude here saying that this harmful traditional practice is actually pulling Bangladesh towards the opposite direction in the development pathway. Yeah, thank you. Over to Suko.
Thank you very much, Munir. We could understand the situation of child marriage in Bangladesh with a very comprehensive data from you. Thank you so much. So the next speaker is Asako. So Asako, could you please go ahead?
よろしくお願いいたします。アルカの鶴と申します。東京から参りました。私は日本出身で、というところもあって、今日は日本のジェンダーギャップについてメインにお話ししていきたいと思います。2019年に発表された最新のジェンダーギャップ指数でいうと、153カ国中、日本は121位です。分野ごとに見ていきましょう。まず、健康が40位、教育が91位です。それぞれ改善の余地はあれと、どちらも100位以内にギリギリとどまっているような状態です。しかし、その前年2018年では、医大受験で性別を理由に不当に点数操作をされて、本来合格していたはずの女性受験者が不合格とされていた問題が明るみに出ました。それも大学側の理事幹事に多様性がないということが一つの原因なんじゃないかなと私は考えています。例えば、不正があった大学のうち一つでは、過去6年の男子と女子の合格率の格差が 1.67 倍も 違うことが判明して、合否判定の際に女子が一律不利となる、不適切な入試は少なくとも2018年度からずっと実施されていたということが明らかになりました。女子が男子よりも精神的な成熟が早くて、受験時はコミュニケーション能力もその結果高い傾向にあるけれども、入学後はその差が解消されるので、あくまで補正を行う必要があって、正当な理由でやったという、驚愕の発表をその大学がしたんですが、その大学の理事を見てみると、22名全員が男性です。で、意思決定の場に多様性がなくて、同質性の中で経営をしているからこそ、経営の中で必要なガバナンスが効かずに、このような絶対に起こってはならない不正というのがまかり通ったのだと思っています。そして、教育はその後にキャリアへ大きな影響を及ぼすのではないかなと考えています。ジェンダーギャップ指数にもある政治、経済の分野と教育はもちろん地続きになっていて、ジェンダーギャップが表面化する一つの入り口があくまで教育になっているんじゃないかなと思っています。さて、ここで話をジェンダーギャップ指数に戻していけたらと思います。健康が40位、教育が91位に対して、政治は144位です。あまりにも低い数字にちょっとショックを受けるんですけれども、日々テレビに映っている政治家だったり、報道される内閣就任の写真、年配の男性ばかりである絵が、もはや違和感すら感じず、当たり前になっているというのが今の日本の現状なんじゃないかなと思います。歴代女性の総理大臣は日本では一人もおりません。現内閣は大臣21人のうち女性はたったの2人です。うち1人は最近女性蔑視発言が結構問題にもなっていたこともあったと思うんですけど、その方が辞任するにあたって後任に抜擢されたので、政治の公平性を期すために大臣職を辞任されました。女性活躍担当大臣もされていた方なんですけれども、その上で若年層の声も聞きながらジェンダーギャップの是正に邁進してこられた方でした。また、現在の国会議員の女性比率です。193カ国中、現在日本は165位。G20 の中で最下位です。私が生まれた1955年では、世界の国会議員比率 11.3% でした。25年前の出来事です。日本の2019年の衆議院議員の女性比率 10.2% で、ほとんど変化がないと。日本は未だに1995年の世界平均にも達していないような現状です。もう一度言います。私が生まれた25年前もです。はい、で生理用品の増税だったりとか、選択的夫婦別姓だったりとか、アフターピルの薬局での販売だったりとか、女性の生活に直接的な影響のある法律も8割、9割が男性の国会の中で決定されているというのが今の現状で、これがどれだけ奇妙なことかというのを改めて考えてみると感じるのではないでしょうか。先ほどの大学も同じように、同質化した組織内での意思決定というのは、ガバナンスが効かず暴走しやすいというのが、そもそも前提として起こりうることなんじゃないかなと思っていて、国民のためにも多様性のある健全な国家運営をしてほしいなと心から願っています。最後に、経済の分野です。日本は115位です。男女別の給与所得の分布を見ていきますと、女性の約 40% が年収200万以下です。対して男性の約 40% は500万以下です。その差は倍以上です。女性も就業率はもちろん上がりつつあるものの、所得にはまだ大きな格差があるというのが現状です。で、何よりも日本で深刻になっているのは上場企業における女性役員の割合です。日本は未だ 5% で、100人中たったの 5% と考えるとかなり少ないなと感じるんじゃないでしょうか。最近、アメリカではナスダックの上場審査の基準で経営陣のダイバーシティが追加されて大きなニュースになったことも記憶に新しいと思うんですが、日本でも前内閣の時に打ち立てたウーマノミクスというのがありまして、202030と掲げて、2020年までにリーダー層の女性を 30% まで引き上げようという宣言を出しました。で、国内の大企業への呼びかけがあったりとか、アクションを促していたんですけれども、結果として2020-2030は未達のまま2021年を迎えて、先ほど申し上げた女性大臣2人だけの新内閣が発足したというのが現状です。いまだ上場企業の女性役員比率も 5% 止まりというところです。もう一つはスタートアップの経営者が集まるカンファレンスなどでのジェンダーギャップも問題になっているのではないかなと感じています。私自身もベンチャーを経営しているんですけれども、登壇者が男性ばかりだと、女性登壇者はあくまで女性ならではの話題、女性経営者のトピックみたいな話ばかりを求められたりですとか、また司会の役割のみをあてがわれたりですとか、そういった問題が日本では今問題視されていて、SNS を中心に大きな議論を呼びました。その上で男性登壇者も登壇を辞退することを表明したりですとか、時間がそろそろですね。
Yes, yes, please.
はい、すいません。はい、ラップアップします。 というようなところで、スタートアップでもボーイズクラブ的な空気が表面化したんじゃないかなと思います。ということで、今回はジェンダーギャップ指数をもとに、日本における政治経済をはじめとした男女格差を振り返ってみたんですが、改めて法的なところだったりとか、いろんなところに課題があるなと感じるので、私も一起業家として、報道番組のコメンテーターとしてできることを考えていきたいなと思っているところです。ありがとうございます。
Thank you, Asako.
Thank you, Atsuko. So for me, I'll talk about target 5.6, which is ensuring universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. For some of you who are listening to us today, this might be a new terminology for you. Sexual and reproductive health and rights is about being able to make your own informed decisions on whether to have or not to have children, when and how many. And it is also about accessing quality, inclusive, and non-discriminatory healthcare. Sexual reproductive health and rights is a basic human right, and it drastically impacts the life of a woman if you don't have the appropriate information and services. I think we've seen a lot of reports around how lack of education diminishes the girls' opportunities for higher income, economic opportunities. So unintended pregnancy during school age, unintended pregnancy at any time of life can always definitely has a big impact on a woman's life. So sexual reproductive health and rights is really about bodily autonomy and making decisions and being able to control your own body. In the past, in 1994, there was a big conference called the International Conference on Population and Development, where there were 179 countries who came together to endorse and commit towards ensuring sexual reproductive health and rights. So it has been 25 years since this big commitment has been made, but progress has been slow and uneven, and we can see that there's still a lot of unmet need. For example, out of 923 million women in reproductive age who want to avoid a pregnancy, what we see now is that there is still about 24% of women who cannot access services. And when it comes to adolescents within the ages of 15 and 19, that percentage is increased to 43%. And then we see that a lot of these unintended pregnancies can lead to unsafe conditions and unsafe abortions that would account to 9 to 11% of all maternal deaths. And there is still a lot of maternal deaths happening around pregnancy and childbirth. There was 295,000 deaths in 2017, which if you calculate it by day, it is still 810 deaths a day. That is how much women or girls are dying around the world related with pregnancy and childbirth. So this is definitely still an area where there is great need, and especially for vulnerable groups, for those who are poor, marginalized, for example, internally displaced persons, people with disabilities, communities that were already disprivileged or disadvantaged to begin with. They will have definitely a greater difficulty in accessing information and services. So the cornerstone and foundation of gender equality is sexual and reproductive health and rights, but there is still a great big needs in making sure that it is affordable and accessible to all women. Thank you. Back to you, Atsuko.
Thank you so much, Tomoko. We now have a very comprehensive picture of women's empowerment worldwide. We learned that poverty and education are two issues to tackle with in terms of women's empowerment. And under the pandemic, that might be affected a lot. And the bodily integrity and autonomy is also a very important driving force for women's empowerment. So thank you so much for all of you. And we like to move forward to the second part, which is on the future. And before I ask the speakers to talk about what would be needed for each target, let me touch upon an issue which has not been addressed properly so far, but has been recognized as a crucial aspect to be looked into when we work for the goal 5. That is intersectionality of gender inequality and discrimination. Women are not monolithic, and there are thousands of diversities among women. Inequality and subordination based on other identities than women, such as nationality, disability, race, and descent, functions with multiple effects in a very entangled manner. The issue is now recognized as an indispensable element to be tackled and put at the top of recommendations of many international conferences and meetings. So I would be grateful if some of the speakers will touch upon the issue if that is relevant in your work. So for the future, we again would like to invite Marika. And Marika, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. We want a lot of things for the future. And while some progress has been made in the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 5, key challenges remain where the perspectives, innovation, and engagement of women is much needed. Women's rights and youth organizations are operating in a context of increasing opposition from right-wing, conservative, and misogynist groups. In addition, implementation remains severely unfunded, with women's organizations and movements struggling to access sustainable funding sources. Global military expenditure has reached $1.9 trillion, but only 0.2% of bilateral aid is transferred directly to women's organizations. And most youth organizations operate on annual budgets of less than $10,000 a year. And unsurprisingly, despite leading COVID-19 relief efforts, women's rights organizations have received little to no financial support in COVID-19 response programs run by the government or the United Nations. The most urgent action for member states, the United Nations, and the broader international community is investment and amplification of existing efforts at the local level led by women, young women, gender non-conforming persons, and girls to build sustainable and inclusive peace in their communities, which are often the most effective and also intersectional, as you said, Ms. Atsuko. This is really the most practical way to turn commitments into actions. The upcoming Generation Equality Forum, which will commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, is a historic opportunity to galvanize global action on women's rights and gender equality. Convening civil society, governments, the United Nations, and private sector organizations, the Generation Equality Forum provides critical momentum to build intersectional solidarity, accelerate implementation, strengthen accountability mechanisms, and mobilize funding for gender equality and sustainable peace. In particular, the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Compact presents a defining opportunity to increase the meaningful participation of women, young women, adolescent girls, and gender non-conforming persons from conflict and crisis-affected areas in decision-making at all levels on peace, security, humanitarian action, and gender equality. After the pandemic ends, we are not going back to normal or to business as usual. Let's actualize our collective vision for sustainable peace and gender equality. The profound understanding women, including young women, have of peace and security within their communities makes it absolutely necessary for them to be at the core of decision-making on peace and security. They bring what is needed, a response that is founded on human rights and feminist values. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marika. That was a very strong word for the women and peace or sustainable peace. And as she mentioned, Global Network of Women Peace Builders was very instrumental to make the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Compact to be realized. Thank you very much, Marika. So let me invite Munir. Munir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. If I want to talk about what needs to be done to achieve the 2030 goal in terms of eliminating harmful practices and a case from Bangladesh, the child marriage issue, I think first of all we need to have very strong commitment from the highest policy level of the country and also from the global level. And as you are saying that this is an intersectional issue, so multi-sector is coming here to play the role, from starting from the poverty to the education to the security. So there is a need of very strong and implementable action plan for the country to eliminate child marriage. And also to build the capacity of the relevant stakeholders, including government and also the community stakeholders, so that they are capacited enough to prevent child marriage. And also to provide comprehensive sexuality education to the young girls who are going to the school and also who are not going to the school. This is very important. And also to community-based outreach campaign targeting adolescent girls, parents, and gatekeepers to increase their awareness and knowledge of life skills, livelihood skills programming, and provide livelihood skills to the adolescent girls so that they are not considered a burden for the family. They are considered as an asset. And also linking these adolescent girls who are vulnerable for child marriage to the economic empowerment programs and services. And the last but not the least is to activate grassroots women and youth-led organizations which can undertake action campaigns against the child marriage and reduce the rate of adolescent pregnancy. I think these are the actions are really critical to eliminate child marriage from the countries like Bangladesh, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Munir, with a very comprehensive explanation about the initiatives which are needed to abolish or to eliminate the child marriage. There are things that is relevant in Japan too, such as comprehensive sexuality education to achieve our body integrity in Japan also, especially in the younger generation. Thank you very much, Munir. And so let me invite Asako. Asako, please go ahead.
はい、ありがとうございます。日本の先ほど申し上げたジェンダーギャップの課題解決のためには、量的変化と質的変化の両方が大事なんじゃないかなと考えています。先ほど申し上げたよりと引きの両方の視点です。例えば、ニュージーランドとかフィンランドのように女性首相が生まれたりですとか、パリテ法のように制度として役員だったり国会議員の男女比が変わったり、女性起業家を対象としたファンドが立ち上がったりなど、仕組みやルールを変えていくことで抜本的な改革を実行していくということ、これを量的変化と呼んでいます。日本にはまずそれが足りなさすぎると思っています。変化を悪とする保守的な思考では大きな改革は起こり得ないんじゃないかなと。いつか自然に変わるのを待つという姿勢を続けた結果、先ほど申し上げた通り、1995年から一向に変わらない女性のリーダー層の数値である今の日本があると思います。なので荒療治ではあると思うんですが、行政や企業が自ら先陣を切ってポジティブアクションを行っていくというのがとても大事なんじゃないかなと切実に思っております。日本の場合、ジェンダーギャップの評価軸でもある政治経済における女性の活躍の場も非常に少ない現状です。もちろん社会に出ていくことだけが正義ではありませんし、経済力を持つことだったり、役員や政治家になることだけが活躍では当然ありません。しかし、今はまだその道に進むための入り口に圧倒的な不平等さがある現状です。一歩目からハードルがあるっていうのが今の日本がいるフェーズですので、だからこそ女性の社会進出の道筋を作っていくというのが何より必要なんじゃないかなと思っています。一方で、仕組みや規定によって大きな量的変化が起こったときに、分断だったり対立、ハレーションが起こるということもあり 見えるんじゃないかなと考えています。そのため制度の変化を受け入れて進んでいくことのできる個人の意識改革というのをどうやっていくのかというのも同じくらい重要なんじゃないかなと考えています。でここではそれを質的変化と捉えています。で鶏卵的な話なんですけれども、質的変化となる個人の意識改革って、量的なルールチェンジが実現した状況下で、あくまでその変化の上でハレーションが起きないための土台としてあるんじゃないかなと考えています。でルールチェンジだったり、ムーブメント、環境整備といった量的変化を受けて仮に女性が立ち上がったとしても、社会全体が彼女たちを支えていこうっていうような意識改革、質的変化が伴っていない現状があると、仕組みができても一歩を踏み出す人の翼を折るようなことがあっては、平等にはならないんじゃないかなと思っています。例えば、伊藤詩織さんの一連の戦いもそうですが、そういったところに対してセカンドレイプが乱発するみたいなことも日本では起こっていました。彼女のような声を上げる女性に対して、周囲の人間はどういう言葉を選んでどんなふうに向き合っていけばいいのかということを改めて教育も含め考えていく必要があるんじゃないかなと思っています。でジェンダーイコーリティは性別に関係なく、個人個人の意思や価値観や選択肢を尊重できる社会づくりのことですので、教育というのがすごく大事だと改めて考えています。でもう一つ大事だと思っているのはパーパスフットで、いろんな業界にいる人たち、性別や職業に関係なく分断や線引きをせずに連帯していくというのがすごく大事なんじゃないかなと思っているので、私も彼ら彼女らと連帯していきながら、今自分がいるフィールドで何ができるのか、日々自問自答しながら2021年も奮闘していきたいなと思っております。ありがとうございます。
Thank you, Asako. Yes, there are so many factors of which hampers changes in Japan, and she focused on the importance of education and other issues. So yes, we have to change the many things in Japan. Okay, so Tomoko, please go ahead. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Atsuko. So for us to make progress against target 5.6, I'd like to highlight 3 areas that we would really need to work on. The first is, of course, making sure that sexual and reproductive health information and high quality, non-discriminatory services is available, safe, effective, and affordable for everyone. And that, especially for contraception, there is a range of contraception methods that are available that a woman can choose from depending on their respective stages of life. And this includes things like emergency contraception that was just mentioned earlier, which is just now women in Japan are starting to get access to. So this is also an issue in Japan, being able to access a wide range of comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services. And this also relates to having a healthy pregnancy and having a safe delivery. The second point I'd like to highlight is around comprehensive sexuality education. So this has come up several times. There's a famous saying that if you provide sex education to young children, you're going to wake up the sleeping dog. But honestly, with all this influx of information on internet right now, believe me, the children are all awake before the adults know it. Depriving them of the correct and right information only deprives them of the knowledge and skills to make responsible choices as they transition from childhood to adulthood. And this goes very much for even Japan as well. So the second area that we really need to work on is a comprehensive sexuality education. And the third thing I think we need to really do in terms of sexual and reproductive health is to advocate with our governments to ensure that this is a fundamental and core business of the health programs that a country has, that it is not politicized and it is not deemed as something that needs to be deleted out of UN and international government statements and documents, because that is the situation we are seeing right now. There is a strong backlash from conservative governments around sexual reproductive health rights. It has been highly politicized because of the issues around abortion, also including LGBTQI, also around comprehensive sexual education. But by politicizing sexual and reproductive health and rights, you are denying the access women should be able to have to affordable and quality sexual and reproductive health services. And this means that governments are reducing funding, reducing commitment to sexual and reproductive health rights. And that means that a woman has no control over her fertility, and preventing unintended pregnancies would become very difficult for many women around the world. So this third area is extremely crucial, that we work and advocate with our governments to raise our voice as women to say sexual and reproductive health and rights. This is a basic human right that needs to be there as the cornerstone of gender equality. And within the SDGs, actually, we see sexual and reproductive health in 2 goals. So it's in goal 3 in health, which covers things like maternal mortality, also universal health coverage, sexual and reproductive health, including family planning. And it is also part of goal 5. And I think we all agree that goal 5 is also, again, the cornerstone of ending the other goals in SDGs 5, like ending poverty in goal 1, reducing inequality in goal 10, or accessing education in goal 4. So as closing, I would like to just say that SRHR needs to be considered as a fundamental and basic human right for all women and girls. And it is the cornerstone of achieving SDGs 5. And thus it will impact if we are able to achieve the SDGs in total by 2030.
Thank you, Tomoko. You almost concluded the session actually. And I was thinking about going to the interactive dialogue, but then we sort of running out of time. So now I have to ask each speaker to make a concluding comment. And in your concluding comment, if you can include some of the good practices or some of the things which are most needed for women to raise voices, I would appreciate it very much. So, Marika, 1 minute, please, for your concluding comment.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of this conversation with so many fierce and determined advocates for gender equality. It makes me feel as though we're heading in the right direction and we have the right support and solidarity amongst us. So I guess that's my message to everyone is that we are about 200 years away from achieving gender equality in any country, and we can't move forward as a world without gender equality. But gender equality is intrinsically linked with sustainable peace. So if we want to achieve gender equality, we need to have peaceful, equal worlds where people have access to food, to education, to economic opportunities, to sexual health and reproductive services, and to many, many other opportunities that make being a human so important. So we need to look at gender equality intersectionally and look at the ways in which we can ensure that women lead and meaningfully participate in all the decision making on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So Munir, probably 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Just continuing from what Mallika was saying, if we want to bring the gender equality, we need to actually eliminate all the harmful practices from the globe. And for that, I would really like to see the increased agency among the adolescent girls and women. And that is so possible if we can give the life skills so that they can raise their voice, they can take their own decision for the life. So I really hope that countries would definitely focus on increasing life skills of young girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Munir. Okay, Asako, please go ahead.
お願いします。今日はありがとうございました。そして、ちょっと今後のことというところで質問いただいたところなんですが、前提として変わらないということを決めつけないというのが大事かなと思っています。人はいつからでも気づけるし、学べるということ、ないしは誰にでも無自覚なジェンダーバイアスがあることというのを繰り返し考えていくこと。もう一つは当たり前のことのように日常の話としてジェンダーをできる限りオープンに、かつ繰り返しジェンダーギャップについて語っていくということで、周りのみんなが自分ごと化して、 議論していく土壌ができるんじゃないかなと思うので、オープンかつ繰り返しに語るということを、私は普段会社ないしは家族、周りの人たちとやっております。
Thank you very much. So, Tomoko, 30 seconds, please.
Okay, thank you, Atsuko. So, as closing, I think I would like to say that women do not get pregnant on their own. There's always a partner involved in this, but why is it that women have to take the brunt of the consequences of the lack of sexual reproductive health and rights? So I would like to say an enabling environment. That means with the partner, with men, with the family, with the community. This gender equality is not something that a woman tries to fix on her own. It has to be with the partner, with the family, with the community. So we need everyone in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much for all the speakers. I truly hope that today's session has inspired you in one way or another and has renewed and strengthened your commitment to work for the Goal 5. Thank you very much.